Today's challenge is this. When did you choose your heterosexuality?
I didn't, but then I'm also a bit of a vegetarian. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Sexual orientation. Obviously not everybody agrees on why it is what it is, why everybody isn't all heteronormative and shit. None are worse about this than the religious, because to them it's not merely something kinda quirky, it's actually something quite sinful. He's not gonna mention it in this video, but I've dealt with these STR guys before and they're Christian. Don't kid yourself about their motives here.
Well, here's how they think that this challenge goes. They think your answer is going to be, well, I didn't choose to be heterosexual. I didn't choose my heterosexuality. I just, ever since I can remember, always felt attracted to the opposite sex. I don't think I ever chose that. And so they're thinking, well, therefore, in the same way, a homosexual also did not choose his homosexuality.
Sort of a side note here. Have you ever noticed how whenever someone who isn't exactly LGBT friendly decides to talk about it, they inevitably default to males? They always object to gay men, trans folk are always male to female, and pedophiles are always men going after little boys. Now, I'm not saying that I want to be in his crosshairs, but lesbians are good for more than just girl-on-girl porn action, you know. To be fair, he does get a little more inclusive later, which is why this is just a side note, but it's something that's always kind of bugged me a little.
And so since therefore he didn't choose it, he must have been born that way, and if he's born that way, then therefore you can't say that homosexuality is wrong. That's, in essence, what the challenge is here.
Note the word he chooses. Wrong. You can't say that homosexuality is wrong. He doesn't say harmful, he doesn't say detrimental, he doesn't even say icky. Wrong implies a moral or ethical stance, like homosexuals are wrongdoers, villains, or, dare I say, evil. Like I said, this guy's religious, and he just tipped his hand. He's gonna try to talk science coming up, but you know he's working backward from his conclusion.
Now, the main problem with this challenge is that it presumes a very naive and limited understanding of an important question, which is, what are the causes of sexual orientation? And it presumes that the answers are either you're born that way or you choose to be that way. But of course, those are not the only options. Sure, there are some situations, there are some characteristics that we get because we are born a certain way. There are some characteristics that we develop because we choose to behave in a certain way, but there are still some other characteristics that are a result of developmental factors. And indeed, this is the case with same-sex attraction. It's not just you're either born that way or you choose to be gay, but in reality there's a third option, and that is that homosexuality is actually a developmental condition. It's something that develops between birth and young adulthood.
Interesting, interesting. So I guess you were born with those chin pubes then? No? They just developed over time, eh? Oh, but you were born with the trait that would produce them between birth and young adulthood. I see. I see.
Now, if it's a developmental condition, then this explains why many homosexuals will always report to you with something like, look, ever since I can remember, I always felt like I was a little bit different than other people. I always felt attracted not to the opposite sex, but to the same sex. Or I always felt different if they're a homosexual male. I always felt different than some of the other boys in the way they behaved. And because homosexual attractions are something that begins to develop at a very young age, between the ages of like 1 and 5 years old, it's often the case that they don't remember what perhaps were some of the causes that led up to that.
1 to 5 years old? Really? I remember boys and girls still thinking the others were icky as old as 10. It wasn't until puberty that attraction really started, at least as far as I could tell. Doing a bit of homework, the fact is that there's no firm age at which sex becomes a thing. It hits some people early, some people late, but a year or two before puberty seems most common. And the earliest age I found was 8, not 1 to 5.
It wasn't because they were born that way, it was rather because something happened that caused them to develop these feelings the way they are.
Oh sure, something happens. but it didn't take place after birth. Scientists have been searching for a fabled gay gene for some time now, but it seems more likely that epigenetic effects, that is, chemical modifications that alter gene activity rather than the genes themselves, may be the cause. Ray Blanchard, a professor of psychiatry at the University of Toronto, has postulated that it's actually the fault of the mother's immune system. The Y chromosome in male fetuses carry proteins called HY antigens. Blanchard hypothesized that these antigens probably cause the development of heterosexuality in males, but because these proteins aren't present in the mother's body, it can trigger a production of antibodies that bind to the HY antigens and causes them to not function, inhibiting the part of the brain that causes heterosexuality to manifest. Point being that the cause, whatever it may be, is almost certainly prenatal, and that this whole "it happened in childhood" malarkey is complete and utter dreg.
Now, this developmental pathway is not something that we developed today. Rather, scientists have known for over 100 years that homosexual attraction, same-sex attraction, is something that develops. Okay? Scientists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and other researchers have been looking at this for a long time and have had actually a fairly good understanding of what causes same-sex attraction.
All he says is scientists. And just that they know because they know, without citing even a single study, without even hinting at what this cause might be.
Based on scientific fact, on theories that have appeared in national magazines.
The problem is that in 1973, the American Psychiatric Association decided that they will remove homosexuality from their encyclopedia that lists all of the mental disorders that they normally diagnose. And so as a result of that, homosexuality was no longer viewed as a mental condition, something that needs to be treated.
And that's a problem because I'll give you $5 and a lollipop if you can give me a reason that is neither religious nor bigoted.
By the way, that decision was not made because there was some new scientific discovery that repudiated 100 years of research. It wasn't like they found a gay gene. It wasn't that there was a new study that said, oh, well, homosexuality isn't a developmental condition. It's something that you're born with. No, there's nothing like that. Rather, it was voted on as a result of political pressure and political correctness.
What is a mental disorder anyway? As early as the 1960s, the very definition of the term, of the very concept, was being disputed. Psychiatrist Thomas Zaz, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, argued that mental illness was a myth used to disguise moral conflicts. Sociologist Irving Goffman said that mental illness is just one of the many ways society labels and controls nonconformists. These changes aren't something recent. They've been a long time coming, and they're a positive sign that humankind is finally starting to get past the rampant xenophobia that has always seemed to be part of human nature.
Okay, so what happened after 1973 was scientists refer to it as the Big Chill. This is a period of time since 1973 where researchers, therapists, psychologists, physicians are no longer allowed to pursue research about the causes, the developmental causes of same-sex attraction. I mean, sure, they can pursue them, but they are intimidated about it, they are pressured against it, and if they try to get research published consistent with those conclusions, then they have a hard time doing it.
Bullshit. Like super large amounts of bullshit. Like a Mondo huge double serving eat the whole thing and it's free pile of bullshit. 30 seconds of research on Google and you can find a metric crap ton of peer-reviewed studies on what might cause homosexuality. If he means that you'll get your ass handed to you if you try to publish a study that justifies your prejudices while playing fast and loose with methodology and evidence, yeah, you're probably gonna get burned. But that's not political correctness, that's just good science.
Now, there are actually a lot of researchers today who continue to pursue research looking into the developmental causes of same-sex attraction. And by the way, these aren't Christian researchers or pastors or something like this. We're talking about secular scientists. Indeed, even gay researchers, people who identify themselves as gay or lesbian, many of them have also come to the same conclusion simply based on the fact that we've known for over 100 years these are the developmental causes of same-sex attraction.
We've already covered why it doesn't matter whether they're developmental causes or genetic, why the "I was born that way" argument isn't invalidated by either. But more important, so what if there's 100 years of science? Funny thing about science, it changes. Science adapts. An individual scientist might be disappointed when their hypothesis fails testing or when their theory is disproved with new data or methods. But showing that something is wrong is always a good thing because it brings us closer to finding what's right. So shouting 100 years of science as if that's somehow a knockdown argument shows a fundamental ignorance of how science works.
So again, the problem with this challenge is that it perpetuates this false dilemma between you're either born gay or you choose to be gay.
There is only one reason that this is a dilemma at all, because some of you jokers think you get to use one of these possibilities as a justification for your homophobia. If homosexuality is a choice, then you get to mistreat those who've chosen it, right? Here's the thing though. Everything in these videos, his and mine, shows that, regardless of its cause, homosexuality is clearly not a choice. And the only possible reason to treat it like something that needs to be cured is if it's causing anybody harm. And the only reason it's doing that is because of bigoted jerkwads who think homophobia is a virtue.
And of course, when scientific facts have to cave to political pressure, then it doesn't really matter what the science says. It doesn't matter what the facts are.
Man, it is a good thing I got a new supply of those for Christmas, huh? Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. But because these proteins aren't present in the mother's body, it can tribber, inhibiting part of the brain that causes lesbians are good for more than just girl on gorn. What is this, Star Trek? Captain's log. We are investigating an asteroid field where we've had reports of strange signals. So far we've found nothing, but our reconnaissance continues.
Captain, unidentified object approaching.
Scan object.
Aye, scanning object.
Captain, the object appears to be bombarding us with Patreon particles.
Is there any damage?
None. In fact, it seems to be giving us even more strength.
Fascinating. It seems that Patreon beams are a benefit to our mission. We must seek out more Patreonic life forms. Plot course and prepare to engage Bionic Drive. You're still here? It's over. Rate the video, subscribe, and close the window. Go.